Alrighty. Well, thank you very much. Good to see you all here. Hold on, let me find you and bring you back. When I shared, everybody ran away. All right, well, it's good to meet you all. I'm Cherie Silas, and I will be your speaker for today. We're going to be talking about this topic of influence and influencing people when you don't have authority. Right? It's one thing when you're the leader and everybody kind of has to listen to you. It's a different thing when you are given responsibilities and you're trying to get things done, you're trying to make change, you're trying to accomplish stuff, and you actually don't have the authority to make any decisions or any demands or anything like that. And I want to start by just telling you that it can be done, and it's not as hard as you might think. And so I'm Cherie Silas. I am a CTC and a CEC. I'm also a professional coach, and I train professional coaches and Agilists to use professional coaching skills in the work they do. And these professional coaching skills are a big part of what is this ability to influence without authority. I also train in Agile and released a book in December, last month, on enterprise Agile coaching. And so many of the concepts that we're talking about today are covered more deeply in the book. So it is available on Amazon and at whatever your favorite bookseller is to get it either in Kindle or in paperback version. So this topic about influencing peers and teams and leaders when you don't have the power to call the shots. It can be kind of difficult sometimes to do this, especially if you're not quite sure how to interact with people in a way that's going to cause them to want to follow you. John Maxwell has a model that's the 5 levels of leadership. And the lowest level of leadership is people follow you because they have to, because you're the boss or you have some title and they don't have a choice if they want to keep their job. And so that's actually the lowest level of leadership. There's 4 levels higher than that, which we're not going to cover today. But it's just an example of the fact that you don't actually have to have authority for people to want to follow you and for you to have influence on what people do. So often we come into organizations and immediately experience a train wreck. How have I seen train wrecks happen? Both in my own experience or lack of experience and what I've seen others do. So when I speak specifically to Agile coaches, and that might include Scrum Masters or other people who are change agents in the organization, just starting off with just some of the mistakes that I've seen that cause these types of train wrecks. People hire us because we're good Agilists. And so often what Agile coaches do is they'll think, well, you hired me because I know what I'm doing. And so I'm going to come in and I'm going to take over and I'm going to fix things. You expect me to make change happen. And so I think if you're looking at things from a coaching perspective, it's, I don't think the right viewpoint is that I am responsible to make the change. In fact, you don't want to have the responsibility for making the change. Why? Because you can't change other people, no matter how hard you try. I'm sure that some of you got married at some point or started living with another human at some point, and you just knew you were going to change them, right? They were going to pick up their shoes in your house. They were not going to leave shoes by the front door, and they weren't going to leave stuff hanging all over the house. And you probably found out that, yep, you weren't able to change that, right? We can't change other people. The only thing that we can change is ourselves. So it's really important that we put the ownership of making change where it belongs, on the people who actually want to see change. And so if you try to take ownership of the change, you're going to get caught up in this performance thing where I've got to make it happen. And you'll start to look at people as they're getting in my way. They're stopping me from being successful. And to be honest, if you're trying to make change happen at an organization and people can see that it's about your success, there's nothing in it for them. Why do they need to make you successful? And so it doesn't always work. And so there's a bunch of little pieces here that you can do that are more likely to push you away from a client than to have them be influenced by you. One of the biggest questions, I mean, the question that almost everyone asks me is, how do you deal with resistance? I'm an Agile coach, I'm in there, I'm trying to make change, I'm making things happen. And these managers or these developers, these product people, they don't want to listen, they don't want to change. They're resisting, they're so resistant to Agile, these project managers. When I answer this question, I generally start with, well, stop creating resistance. Because most of the resistance we encounter as Agile coaches have nothing to do with Agile. They're not resisting Agile. Often they're not even resisting change. What they're resisting is you. And it's the way that you're interacting with them that causes them to push back against you. So what we want to do is we want to create an environment where people don't resist you, they invite you in. I refer to this approach of using coaching, professional coaching mindset and skills as an invitational approach. You want to create an environment where the client invites you to be a partner with them because you've invited them to be a partner with you. And it's often about the way you see them. When we look at people and we treat people in a way that says, I think that you're competent, I think you know what you're doing, and I don't think that I'm here to fix you, because often coaches think I'm here to fix this environment, right? I'm here to fix things. But when you come in with an attitude that says, you don't know what you're doing, I'm here to fix you, nobody really likes that attitude, right? If you stop and think for just a moment, and I want you to imagine that, you know, you probably have your own house, your own apartment, you're grown, you're adults, you're living on your own, and your mother-in-law or your mother or the neighbor next door comes over to your house and they go into your kitchen while you're cooking. They're like, what are you doing? That's not how you cook. You're supposed to stir the pot this way. And then they open your cabinets and they're like, why are the plates over here? The plates belong here and forks belong here. And they start reorganizing your kitchen and telling you that you don't know what you're doing in there. How's that going to feel? Probably not very good, right? You're going to resist them. You're going to be like, get this person out of my house now. Well, when we go into someone's company, and we look around and we're like, man, they're doing all kinds of things wrong. And we start telling them what they're doing wrong and how what they're doing is not Agile and it's not right. And they should do it this way and they need to change this. They get that same feeling, right? You came into my house, often uninvited. Maybe somebody invited you, but I sure didn't invite you. And now you're telling me I don't know how to do my job. I've been doing this job for 15 years. I'm a senior manager, for God's sake. I must be doing something right. I know what I'm doing. How dare you come and tell me what to do? Right. And so it creates this huge amount of resistance where people are like, they're resisting you. And so I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but as you start to see resistance, because the reality is some people, well, most people resist change to some level, right? So let's assume we get past they're resisting you and they actually like you. And so I think a habit that we have as humans is we go after what's not right. And so if you think about the work you're doing with an organization, some people are going to be your early adopters. right? They're going to be excited. They're going to be ready. They want to experiment. They want to, let's do this thing. And they're ready. They want to bring Agile, and they want to use Agile to get the business results they need. Then there's this big group of people who sit who are like behind that, and they're kind of watching to see what happens. They're like, yeah, we've seen a lot of stuff come and go. We've done this for 6 months and that for 6 months. I'm not going to get all into this. Let's wait and see if it lasts. I'm not really sure if I like this or not. And then there's the final group who are like, I'm not doing this. I'm going to be retiring in 6 months. I am not learning something new. I don't want to do this. I didn't sign up for this. I like to work by myself. I want to be, I want to do what I've been doing. I've been successful. And so the habit that we often have is to go after that group that's resisting. And so what happens when you do that and you start focusing on, the 10 or 15 people who are resisting, or sometimes more if you've got a bigger organization, what will happen is what you focus on makes the most noise. And what makes the most noise gets the most attention. And so when you focus on trying to kind of force these resistors to change, these ones who are getting in your way, that are stopping progress for everyone, when you focus on them, their voice gets louder. And what happens is you begin to create momentum that's going in the wrong direction. Because that group in the middle, what they're doing is they're watching and waiting to see what happens. Is this worth going after, or is this something that we want to resist? And when the noise that they hear comes from the resistant group, well, they're going to get the message that I should resist too. And so you're going to create this momentum that goes backwards, and you get more and more resistance, and things get rougher and rougher, and it's harder to make change. What you want to do is resist going after them. I say never, ever work against resistance. If someone is resisting, do not push against it. What happens when you push against resistance? It pushes back, and there's that equal opposite force thing, right? When I apply force, they're going to apply force too. And so what you want to do instead is focus on the group that wants to make change. What'll happen if you focus on them is, number one, they're ready. They're ready to experiment. They're ready to do all the failing and learning and proving that things work or that they don't work. And so you've got a group there who is open. And what will happen is, as they succeed and as they learn things, they're going to start making noise. And so where the noise is, the momentum goes. The people who are waiting in the middle to find out, well, which way do I go? They hear that and they're like, wow, this must actually be a good thing. Maybe I should slide over there and check it out. Before I was an Agile coach, I was a leader in banking, and I ran a huge organization that had multiple departments in it. And this is where I learned this lesson the most. It was, I had one department handed to me. They usually handed me the stuff that was broken and falling apart and wasn't working, and said, take this thing and fix it. And so when that happens, people come in and they lost the boss they liked, and they automatically didn't like me, right? They didn't trust me. They didn't like me. They didn't want anything to do with me. And so what I would do is look at that process that they owned, and I would take somebody from one of my other departments who was like wanting a change and wanting a challenge, and I would plant them in that department. And so I put them in there, and they start learning, and they start saying, well, this doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense. Let me change this. And they would start building a process, and before long, that person would be overperforming everybody else. And so people would start asking, well, what are you doing? Wait, how are you getting that done? And so before long, most of the department was bought in to actually moving forward and making change because they were being successful. And there were always those few who were like, I'm not doing that. Within about 6 months, those people usually quit or get fired anyway. So, or they want to keep their job and they just shut up and follow along because they want to keep their job. And so give it time. Don't focus on that. Focus on what you can do, and let the resistors kind of fall off or decide that they're going to move forward. And so when we think about what else causes resistance, when you take a professional coaching mindset, because as an Agile coach, we're coaches, right? We should have a coaching mindset. Now, I fully recognize that Agile coaches do some mentoring and training. They do consulting, facilitating, coaching, and very little of the work you do is really, I'm having a professional coaching session, right? It's very little of that. You might do some retros that are coaching, maybe some organizational improvement sessions or something like that, and maybe a few one-on-ones. But for the most part, you're kind of doing a bunch of things. And so what's really important is not that you are doing coaching sessions, but that you are using coaching competencies and a coaching mindset. So the way of thinking and seeing people, that is what a professional coach does, right? Being neutral and not trying to influence, you've got to do it my way. You know what? You may have seen things work before, and you may have seen things not work before. The last 3 clients might have done something and you're like, yep, this is the same problem here. I can guarantee you that the same solution doesn't fit the same way because it's a different system. There's a different human system. There's a different political system. There's a different process system. There's a different technical system. While the surface may say this is the same, how to implement a solution is going to be different. Right. And so we don't want to just take something out of the box and drop it in and say, here's my solution. Those things rarely work. Right? And so when we think about this coaching mindset, it's a mindset that looks at people and says, you know what? You're competent. You know your company better than I do. I might know stuff, but you know stuff too. And so it's not about me fixing you and me knowing more than you. You don't need me to fix you. You're not broken. You need a partner. And I want to partner with you to help you see things from different perspectives, to help you get more information so you can make the decisions that you want to make. Right? And so when you look at people as competent and resourceful, and they are able to solve their own problems, and even if you present a solution, they are the ones who know how to implement that solution in their own environment. Because you can't take something out of the box and just drop it in. It won't work that way. So they know their system way better than you. I think it takes a lot of audacity for someone to come into an organization, be there for 15 minutes, maybe a week, and start telling them how to, all the stuff that's broken, because you don't really understand what's happening, right? And so when you look at people as competent, something happens. What happens is the way you interact with them shifts, right? So if I don't think someone's competent and I'm watching what's happening and the decisions they're making and the processes they have in place, I'm like, oh my goodness, what in the world are these people doing? This is crazy. Or maybe people are saying they're behaving certain ways and I'm like, oh, this guy's making me nuts. Why is he doing this? Doesn't he know? That is an indication that you're not seeing them as competent. What happens when you start to see people as fully competent is when you see those weird things, right? Your first reaction might be, what? And then you stop and you think, well, okay, there must be a reason that they made this decision. There must be something happening. There's some problem they're trying to solve or some problem they solved, and this was the solution. And people make the best decisions that they can in the moment with the information they have available to them. Right? And sometimes they implement solutions and they keep them for 10 or 15 years and the problem's not even there anymore, but it's the way they do things. And so this is where the shift comes in, because you respect people in a different way and you ask more questions, right? Instead of, this is what you're doing wrong, or that's not Agile. You say, this is interesting. Tell me about what's going on here, what problem this is solving. Tell me a bit about, how this process works. And so you start asking questions, and often you realize when you stop to listen that, okay, their solution makes sense. And while it may not seem to be optimal, it's what they have and it's what they can do in the moment. Right. And so it's really important to understand that it's okay that everything is not perfect, and you can't go from 0 to 100 immediately. Right. It takes time for things to change. For you, this whole Agile adoption, it's one thing, right? I'm doing Agile adoption. There's this one thing I'm trying to do, this one change. For the people you're working with, it's hundreds and thousands of changes, small micro changes. Here's a process. Here's a responsibility. I have to let go of this. I have to now do things this way. There's thousands of changes. And another thing to remember is that, well, Agile's probably your main focus. That's your main job. It's not their main job. In fact, it's not even a job, right? The purpose of your work is not to make companies Agile. You might think it is because you're an Agile coach and they hired you to help them adopt Agile. But the reality is Agile is not the destination. Agile is the mechanism. Agile is a solution to business problems, and it might not always be the solution, right? So the purpose needs to be, what are the business results that the company's trying to get that they can't get? And what are the root causes of why they can't get that? And does Agile provide something that can help with that? It's not about, are they doing their stand-ups and are they doing their retros and are they doing their sprint reviews? Great, those things solve problems. But what we need to know is, what's the client's problem, right? If you want to create momentum instead of resistance, find out what hurts them the most, not what hurts you the most. You're going to see lots of stuff that's painful, right? Find out what's making them feel like they're failing. Find out what's getting in their way. And when you do that and you focus on that, what you'll find is that a lot of that stuff that's painful to you is they're actually solutions for their problems. So, but it creates a whole different environment. So instead of you saying, you need to do this and that's broken, what they hear is, what do you want to fix? What needs to change? Oh, here's a few solutions that might help. How do you think that might help here? And so it's all about them and not about you. That opens up a lot of influence. Okay? And so I want to take just a quick breather and find out if there's any questions. I have not been watching the chat box, Jamie. So if there's any questions or if anybody wants to raise their hand, we're happy to take a few.
Yep, nothing in the chat, but feel free to throw something in chat or just raise your hand.
All right. Well, if you have questions or thoughts, raise your hand. I'll stop throughout and we'll grab that. So let's see. What else do I want to say here? How about this? Agile coaching is more about partnership than it is about compliance. And so what I've noticed over the years is that there's two kinds of Agile coaches. There's the Directive Agile coach, and there's the Invitational Agile coach. The Invitational Agile coach is what I've been describing. The Directive Agile coach is that other one, the one that is like they own the process. They tell people what to do. They have the solutions. In short, they're often actually an Agile consultant, not an Agile coach. I do work with tons of people, tons of Scrum Masters, tons of Agile coaches in the industry. And the number one thing that holds people back from taking a coaching approach is that they actually don't know what coaching is. Not because they're dumb, because you only know what you know, right? If you've never been exposed to something, then you don't know it exists. And so the reason why shifting to an invitational approach is so helpful is because when you take that directive and dictative approach, you can make things happen. And you know what? You can probably make change happen pretty quickly because you get a lot of compliance. I've worked in organizations with other coaches. In fact, my favorite one to talk about, I worked with 2 other Agile coaches. And the other 2 Agile coaches were very directive. In fact, one of them was a military guy, and he ran things like he was a military guy. When I went, I would drop into a few stand-ups when I first got there. And there was this one group that I walked into the room, and they were like, they were really nervous. You could tell they were looking at me, and I was like, "You're cool, go. I'm just hanging out. Like I'm just watching." And so they finished up their stand-up, and then they looked at me and they're like, "Do you want to say anything?" And I was like, "Nope, nothing to say. I was just observing." And then somebody let out a deep breath, and he was like, "I cannot believe you're not going to yell at us." I was like, "For what?" "Because of the filter we're using in Rally." What? Yeah, that other coach, if we use this filter instead of the filter he said that we're supposed to look at stories through, he goes and tells our boss that we're not coachable and we're not listening to him, and then we get in trouble. I was like, that's interesting. So why do you use this filter instead? And they were like, "This is the one that tells us the information we need." It's like, cool, then why don't you use that filter? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And so what was happening is he would see people as uncoachable because they weren't listening. He didn't know what coaching was. And people weren't uncoachable. They didn't want to be coached by him. Right? And so there's a difference. And so when you get this directive approach, he had a lot of stuff going. Like when I got there, there was a lot already happening, and those people were like in shape. I walked from team to team to team, and I was like, wow, this is eerie how much exactly alike these teams are. And it was because they were all compliant. They wanted to keep their jobs. Right? Well, what happens when you remove the forcing mechanism is everything rolls back. Right? I worked at that company for a year with them, and I was kind of hated by the other coaches because I wasn't the same. They thought I was like messing stuff up. But what was really interesting was after I left that company, and the other 2 coaches left also a little bit later, everything started to roll back. They thought they had it. They said, "We don't need Scrum Masters anymore." Then they said, "We don't need product owners anymore." And they just started rolling further and further back. And what was amazing to me that really proved this approach works is that the people who I had been working with and mentoring, they had long tenures, like 15, 19 years, and they quit. And they said, "You gave us this way of working. You can't take it away. This is what we believe now." And so that was pretty amazing to see that by taking that coaching approach and letting the client lead and not being an agile police officer, right? They actually learned and changed the way that they were thinking, and there was a permanent change. And so this is how you create sustainable change. You let the client take ownership. You follow the client's agenda. You ask more questions than you give answers. And you don't force people to do what they don't want to do. You cannot coach people who have not agreed to being coached. So when you walk into that manager's office and start saying, "Yeah, I noticed you did this today," and the manager's like, "Okay, who are you? Why are you telling me this? You don't have permission to tell me what I'm doing wrong. I never said I wanted to fix this." Right? That's not the way to create sustainable change. you have to get agreement from somebody, from people, that this is the work we're doing together and they actually want your input, right? And so you can create that ability to work with them by treating them with respect and by treating them like they know what they're doing, like they're competent, right? So there's a question in the chat box about what can be done proactively to prevent new leaders from undoing change. Harry, that's a big one. Depends on who the leaders are. If your top leader changes out and they want to go a different direction, it's going a different direction. And you probably don't have a whole lot to say, right? Because you have to have the partnership and the ownership, the buy-in from the people who have the power to make change in order to make that change, right? And so if it's new people, like within the organization, it's not the top people, then I think it's a matter of getting to know them, right? You don't ever want to jump in as I'm the expert. You want to get to know people. You want to build rapport and relationship and influence so that they're open to you. Ultimately, you can't change other people. They change themselves or they choose not to. But what you can do is create an environment and the opportunities. You can model the behavior and how it works. And when they see those behaviors, how people react to you instead of them, they hopefully will pull that in. Can I promise that? Nope. I can't promise my own kids are going to do what I say to do, right? But it's really about relationship and about putting their needs first. Don't ever come in with your own agenda. See what's painful to them. What's going to make them successful? Be their partner. Even if what they're doing is like, this is not what I would do. Right? You've got to walk the road with them and then let that influence come. So I hope that was helpful.
Cherie, can I share a story that happened to me in the last 24 hours? And
Oh, yeah.
I have got a huge learning from it and have learned that I need to do something differently.
Sure.
The process improvement for me as a Scrum Master. So I am working for a tech company who are going through an agile transformation, and I have been getting compliance from leadership about team structures and changing the dynamics in the teams about cross-functional teams. And they gave me some compliance instructions about, right, go and assemble this team. We want this person, go make it happen. So off I goes in the last 24 hours. I went round to the individuals to ask them to stop doing what they're doing, had those one-on-one conversations about what workloads they were doing. Also let the new team product owner know and the Scrum Master know of these imminent changes that are coming up. Great, they understood, happy with all of that. And then sent all of the invitations for the Scrum events to the new people coming in. And then the big resistance was nobody told the existing team. And we all rocked up into the daily Scrum because ding-a-ling-ling, I shouldn't have done that. So the Scrum, daily Scrum is for the developers, by the developers. I forgot that. Rocked up. I let the Scrum Master and the team explain the changes, and it went down like a lead balloon. I got it in the neck. Didn't sleep very well last night because I knew my conscience and I knew I'd done it wrong. So huge learning for me. I now have to go with forgiveness and say to them, my approach was wrong, and how I did it, how I relayed the information was wrong, and make some suggestions about how we might do it differently next time and ask them what they want to do.
Awesome. Yeah, great learning there. And you know, you're leading right into this question in the chat box about you've been doing it the consultant way for a while And now there's walls that are built up, people are mad, and you're trying to change. How do you tear the wall down? And Helen, I think your answer there is exactly right. Be honest. Go and tell them, look, I screwed up, y'all. Like, I have totally messed this up, and I want to take a different approach. Right? I cannot tell you how much an apology, and a sincere apology, can go across. I had a big mess up once. I moved from one part of an organization to another. I was used to working at that organization the way they wanted. I came into the other one thinking, yep, same company, right? Yeah, boy, was I wrong. I ticked some people off right away, and like some really senior developers who were influential, like everybody followed them. And this guy was not loving me. And so I went and I sat up next to his desk. I kind of leaned against his desk one day, and I was like, you know what? I'm not here to fight against you, and I'm really sorry if that's the way I came across. I did not mean to come across as arrogant. What I want is for you to be successful. Can you tell me what's hurting you? What are your pain points? Right? I want to help you. It's all about your success. Help me understand what I can do, even if it's just get out of my way. Tell me what you need fixed, right? And I'll see if I can help. All the walls fell down, and this guy became a really big advocate of mine, and we ended up working together very well and accomplishing a lot. But if I had not humbled myself and gone to apologize, would have never happened. And he would have held a lot of people in his grip to go the other direction. And so humility is a big part of coaching. If you want to be an Agile coach because you like the title and you like the power and it looks cool and all that, take a breath. Remember that humility is first. If you see yourself as above people, then it's not going to work for you. You can't see your client as above you, or you'll be afraid to give the direct feedback, right? You also can't see them beneath you, because then you'll talk down to them. You need to see them as a true partner. We're all humans, right? And so I often have people ask about, well, what if I'm an internal coach? And these are my bosses. The way I've handled this, and it's been successful for me, it might not be successful for you because it's kind of a mindset thing. Even when I've been an employee, I've approached my work as I'm a coach. And so my role is to be neutral, which means that everyone is my client. My boss, I don't look at them as my boss. I look at them as my client. And so just like I have to satisfy my boss, I have to satisfy my client. But it's different when you look at them as your client than when you look at them as the person who signs your paycheck. Because if you're worried about the person who signs your paycheck, then it's going to impact the way you interact with them, because it's going to be about you first. That's self-protectiveness. And I know that might sound like, yeah, but I've got a full-time job and I'm secure. I get that. And I also have experienced the fact that, contractors, consultants, they know that their tenure is limited. They could come in tomorrow and their contract's dead. And employees feel a certain security. And the reality is it's false security, right? Any of us can come in tomorrow and we get laid off. We don't know that. Not that I'm trying to scare you or anything, just to put it in perspective, right? Is when you look at people, if you respect your client, you see your client as competent and whole, it's only going to improve your relationship with your boss and other leaders if you look at them that way and you view them as clients, because you're going to have a better emotional state and you'll be more neutral. You'll be 100% invested in the outcomes they want, and you won't be tied to the solutions and the way they get there. You'll let them take ownership of that. Right? So that works for me. Don't know if it'll work for you. It's something you might consider trying. So the consultant versus coaching mindset. Now, I want to start with saying there's nothing wrong with Agile consultants. There's a place for them. They are good at what they do, and many companies want and need that. I have no problem with them. And if you're an Agile consultant, please just call yourself an Agile consultant. I mean, it's that easy. Don't call yourself a coach if you're not a coach. It confuses the industry. It confuses clients. People already don't know what coaching is. Right? They think coaching is you're going to tell me what to do. That's not actually coaching. That's consulting. And when I look at the difference between a coaching and consulting mindset, the consultant mindset by good purpose is that I'm here to fix you, because that's what you hire consultants to do. Come tell me what's broken, tell me how to fix it. They'll either fix it for you or they'll leave you with a PowerPoint of instructions and leave you to fix it for yourself. Agile coaches do consulting, and you should be doing some consulting. If you're not, then you're probably not holding up your end of the bargain. Right? However, when you approach things from a coaching perspective, consulting looks a lot different. When you look at it from a pure consulting perspective, it looks like that's broke, this is how you fix it, this is how you fix it, you need to do this instead of this. When you do consulting from a coaching perspective, it looks more like, tell me what's painful, tell me what hurts, what's working, what's not working, what's possible. And you find things out, and then you help them to think through them, and you're going to give an opinion. Right? I often give my professional opinion to companies that I think that what you're trying to do here, you're trying to get faster delivery, and these component teams that you've got, front end, back end, all these pieces, they're slowing you down. And I don't think you'll be successful as long as you stay this way. And so my opinion, you need to form cross-functional teams. Now, with that said, tell me what it might take to do something like that here, or if it's something you're even interested in, right? And so we have a conversation about how they could do that and what would work about it and what might not work about it. And sometimes they do it and sometimes they don't. And if they don't, that's fine. It's their company. I go along with them for the ride. They experience the pain of it, and they may never change that decision. And sometimes they do. They get a little further down the road and they're like, okay, this is still not working. Well, my opinion's still the same. Do you want to experiment with this? Why don't we take one team and see what happens? And so it's way different. And so what I'm not saying is that if you're an Agile coach, all you can do is ask questions. No, that's not true, right? Yes, people hire you for your expertise. And if you're an Agile coach and your interactions with clients look a bit like this, the client says, this is the problem we have. We've been trying to solve it. We don't know what to do. What can we do? And your response as the coach is, well, what do you think you can do? They're going to want to punch you in the face. Like, why did you just ask me, what do I want to do when I just told you I don't know what to do? Right? That is not coaching. When I ran a coaching department, I don't know the right words right now, that had like 12 enterprise coaches under me in different parts of a huge company. They all worked in different company areas. And the number one complaint I got from the general managers of those different disparate companies was I would get a phone call and it would go a bit like this. Cherie, get this coach out of here now. Wait, hey, Jack, what's going on? Tell me a little bit about what's happening. Every time we ask them for advice or an opinion, they say, how would you do it? What the heck are they doing here? And why do I need them for that? What am I paying this person to do? You know what? They're right. So there's a lot more to coaching than just asking questions. Even strict professional coaching, there's a lot more than just asking questions. Right? There's making observations, there's giving feedback, there's challenging. right? There's a lot of different coaching skills that you can bring in. So don't get wrapped in this little thing that says, well, I'm a coach, all I can do is ask questions. And especially as an Agile coach, don't get wrapped into that. And be careful, because often when coaches are, there's this battle, right? When do I say something? And often when coaches are jumping in and giving advice and solutions and all that stuff, the problem isn't their answers, it's that they jumped in too soon and they didn't give the client the chance to work on it and try to figure it out. And sometimes that comes because I just want to help. And sometimes it comes because I think that's what I'm supposed to do. And sometimes it comes because, well, I want to prove I'm adding value. And there could be other reasons, right? But you want to be able to balance, right? Let them talk it through a bit and don't hold back your expertise. They hired you for your expertise. Be free with it. Just don't be domineering with it. And don't come out too soon, because what will happen is they'll become dependent on you and everything will go through you and they'll be looking to you for permission, which means that you're the one responsible if they fail. So it's easy to push responsibility over on you. So any other, I don't know if I see other questions in here. How can you build rapport, relationships, influence in a remote world? And it looks like you've got some things there. Small talk, meetings after the meeting. So I guess that question got answered. Really good answers there. Anybody have a question or a comment? I want to give you all some space. Throw your hand up, throw something in the comments, or turn on your mic.
I think Tracy was saying that because we're in a remote world, that small talk at the water cooler and the lunchroom and the meeting after the meeting doesn't happen anymore. And they're wondering, how do we do it then?
Ah, okay. Sorry, I'm trying to read and not read at the same time. So thank you for that. I think when you're in a remote environment, it has to be more intentional. Right. Now, there's a couple of things that I've seen even back before the whole world went to COVID that I've seen that were really successful. The one that I thought was the absolute best solution that I've ever worked in was that when everyone, we were using Google Hangout at that time, but when you logged in for the day, you joined Google Hangout. So whether you were on site, if you were on site, everybody was in a room, they had the Google Hangout on, and those who were offsite or at home or wherever they were in the Hangout too. And so it created this sense of being in the room together. And so all you had to do was unmute your mic and say, hey, Heath, what do you think about this? And so there was a lot of communication back and forth, just like there would have been sitting next to each other in a room. And when you had to go do something else, you just said, hey, I'm going to another meeting, I'll be back. And so to me, that was the thing that I saw the most effective, because it simulated the on-site environment, right? And when people wanted to talk and they were like, hey, we need to discuss something, let's go on Zoom, they would just like go into a breakout room and they would go by themselves and talk if they needed to do something kind of in private. So to me, that's a big thing. And the other is just being intentional, having conversations with people, and getting agreement about how you're going to keep up those relationships. I've been working remote since about 2 years before the rest of the world went remote, and I've not seen it make an impact. It's a little bit harder to get in the places you need to get, because you have to be intentional to be there. But that's the thing, you just have to make that effort. And I've done coaching remotely. So, any other thoughts or questions? All right.
So do you have some suggestions on how we could, what we can do in terms of building trust, right? Because in terms of our ability to influence, the trust has to be the foundation of that first, right? And so what are some things that help us to build trust if you're new to an organization, or maybe if you're just working with new people in the organization that you're already there?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is this ask, don't tell, right? And it's building relationships. Whenever I start with a new, if I'm working with an organization, if I start with them, or even if I'm just working with an individual team, the first period of time I work with them, I'm just observing. Right. I start with a new team and I say, hey, would it be okay if I just, like, for this first sprint, can I just watch, and so I can get a better feel for who y'all are and what you're doing, and just watch. Like, I have no opinions. I want to learn. And I go have coffee with people or whatever and get to know the individuals. And I ask them for, help me understand what you're doing here. Help me understand your product. Help me understand your challenges, and what's working and what's not working. And then after I've spent that time, if I'm doing it at the organizational level, I just kind of walk around and observe, and I meet people and I ask questions, and I build rapport. And so after that time, I create a coaching agreement, and we come in, and I'm like, so I've got to know you a little bit. You've got to know me a little bit. What's the work we want to do together? Okay. How do you want to work with me? What do you expect from me? What do I expect from you? And a big thing is, what is the focus of the reason we're engaging? I'm not just here to pop around and do things. We need to understand what we're working on together. And so we build a coaching agreement. At a team level, it's probably not in writing. We might write something on the whiteboard, right? It looks a bit like, what are the challenges you have? What are the business results you're struggling getting? What do we need to fix to get there? How will you know? What are the measurements of success? What are some of the things we might be able to do in order to fix that? Right. And it looks the same at the organizational level. It's just a bigger process. In the book, there's several chapters on getting started with an organization, from all the way from working on the contract through I'm in there and we've actually outlined outcomes. So that'll help you. It'll be more in depth. But yeah, I think that's it. Just building relationships, building trust, being genuine, looking at people like they know what they're doing. You'd be amazed how much rapport you can build just by respecting people and by listening. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be listened to, and it doesn't happen often enough.
So we have another question from Nadia. How do you deal with leaders who are metric centric and want a coach to go into a team to help improve their metrics? And what do you do when the team isn't asking for help, but the leaders are?
Those are great questions. So there's a few of them.
Yeah.
Let's start at the bottom. What do you do when the team isn't asking for help, but the leaders are? And that goes back to this coaching agreement. And so anytime you're coaching, you can't do that without permission. And sometimes you get like plugged in, that's your team, you go coach them, and the team doesn't know anything about it. I remember my very last Scrum Master role. I was hired, I had interviewed with some teams, came in, they assigned me to a whole different team. Manager walks in, tells the group, hey, this is Cherie, your new Scrum Master. Their response was, who the hell said we needed a Scrum Master? I was like, oh, this is going to be good. It worked out great. I got some fans out of it. But yeah, people don't want somebody just thrown on them. And so what you want to do, this is a process of building coaching agreements. You need to understand what the leader wants and be really clear about what your role is. It's not performance management, and coaching is not a disciplinary thing. Okay? Talk with the team. Find out what they want. Find out what they're struggling with, what they need to fix. Be really honest about the fact that, yep, I know y'all didn't ask for me to be here, and I know I'm here, And I'm not going to force you to do anything. I'd love to help you if you need help. So if there's things that are frustrating, getting in the way, if there's organizational impediments or other team processes that are like just blocking you, I'd love to work with y'all and see what we can do. Right. And so we make an agreement about what the work is we're going to do together. And then you need what's called a triangle agreement. Manager, team, and coach. Pull us all together and let's talk about the work we're doing here and what are the rules. Where's confidentiality? Who's going to tell, who does the manager go to if they want to know progress? They're not going to come to me because coaching's confidential. I'm not going to tell them what happened. And the team needs to know that, and the manager needs to know that, right? And some other things like how is this going to work? And so by doing that, you create that alignment of how we're going to work together. And people feel respected, they feel heard, and there are some ground rules. Remember, you make contracts for when things go bad, not for when things go good. So you want to get those contracts in place to help you know how to interact. And then metrics centered, I think you've got to ask some questions. What's the problem you're solving is the number one question, right? So metrics are often, people are putting metrics in because they're trying to prove something, prove we're making progress, prove, often it's about outputs and not outcomes. Are we getting outputs? Are we finishing stories? But you can finish a whole lot of stories and it all be waste, right? So you want to ask, what's the outcomes you're trying to achieve? What's the problem you're trying to fix here? What do these metrics tell you? And how can we get you the real information you need for the outcomes you want? And so there's a process there, figuring out, sometimes it's that their boss, they need the information. Managers are famous for telling teams or Scrum Masters, I need this report. And when you dig into it, it's because they need the information for their boss. Okay, so let's bring that problem to the team. Manager 1 needs information to give manager 2. How do y'all want to solve this, team? How are we going to get them the information they need? The team might say, you need a report. Cool. They might come up with something else. Remember, you're bringing problems, not solutions. If you bring solutions, a lot of times your solutions, they don't even know the problem because humans go to solutions. Let's talk about the problem. And then design the right metrics that are going to help you get to that problem or know that your problem is solved. Great. So let me just throw this up here really quickly. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. My email address, info@tcagile.com. Feel free to send me questions if you have any that don't get answered. I'm going to pull the slides down, but I want to stay and talk to you. We've got some time, so if there are others who have questions, I'd even love to hear if you don't agree. I've tried this stuff and I don't believe in it, whatever. Let's chat. Let's see what we can come up with. So, who has something you want to add? Comments, questions, concerns?
So I think, Cherie, going back to metrics, that's always an interesting topic for me because I find that metrics, they do drive behavior. They don't always drive the correct behavior. And too often in the Agile world, we're often asked for metrics on team performance. And to your point, you know, it's not about, is the team delivering value? I mean, that's ultimately what we need to know, right? In terms of how the team is performing. Are they able to pivot when they need to? Are they creating value? But being really careful about those metrics that you're being asked to deliver. So a lot of times as you said, I dig deeper and try to find out, well, what is it you're trying to accomplish by asking for this metric? And maybe, you know, I've even had bosses ask for like they'll set up an objective. Team needs to improve their velocity by 15% for the year. And I'm just like, oh my goodness.
Great, we're gonna start sizing stories bigger. We'll get that.
What do you even, yeah. So what does the team do? They'll just, yeah, right, the story's bigger. I mean, velocity obviously isn't ever meant to be used as a performance metric, but it's funny how oftentimes managers will ask for that or compare teams and things like that. So just pointing out to be very careful about metrics, because they can drive the wrong behavior and people can game them if they need to. So we want metrics that are driving behaviors that we want to see, which is how can we deliver more value more efficiently?
Mhm.
And how do we know that we're working on the right thing at the right time?
Yeah, I would take it further than that. First, you always want to back into metrics. Start with the behaviors and back in, rather than start with whatever it is and go forward. Secondly, you always want to have balanced metrics. You never want to measure one component. Okay, we want to move faster. Great, let's measure move faster. Well, if you're not, what you measure, you will get. That's what you're going to get, because that sets the expectation. Well, if you're looking for fast and you're measuring fast, you're going to get it. It might not work, but you're going to get it, right? And so you want to have balancing metrics on quality and whatever else, right? You want to keep a balanced scorecard, so that you're looking at process and people and technology and the customer's impact. And so by keeping it balanced, what happens is you don't pull things off in one direction or the other. At the organizational level, you want to look at roll-ups, not at individual teams, because it's not about teams, it's about trends. And so you get some information by seeing. I've actually used velocity to prove a point to leaders, to show them where a big problem was. I looked at velocity of the whole organization over a couple of quarters. And I was able to show the leaders how every quarter, like when they were doing PI planning, and they were just like stepping in and nobody knew what was going on before they got there. They just all started learning things. So velocity would go down for the first 3 weeks, or for the first 3 sprints, because it took people that long to figure out what the heck they were doing. And then velocity would go back up. And so there was this huge trend. And so we talked about what's the cause of that. And then they were able to identify, well, we actually need organizational level backlog refinement, so that people come into planning knowing what they're doing, not like, hey, here's stuff, we're throwing it over the wall. And so we use that to solve a problem. And so velocity evened out once they got that in place. And so metrics can give you information. They can help you to understand a story, but they're not truth in and of themselves, right? You can't look at a metric and know the story. You look at a metric and you ask the questions. What's happening here? This is curious, right? And so, yes, be careful with metrics. And I would say there's a scrum.org has a fantastic resource that we use, and it's called evidence-based management. And it's about getting the right metrics in place to get where you want to be, and they're good metrics. So, and it's really good for leaders to understand how to set those metrics. So that's a really good resource for you to look at.
Yeah, I believe they even have a new certification for that.
Yes, we teach that.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, anybody else? Thoughts, questions? I feel like I have talked way too much today. I never talk this much. All right. Then I will hand this back over to Jamie and let you do with it what you please.
I have one question, please.
Oh, sure. Ada.
Sure.
Can you just recap, if you will, what would you say are the 3 main points, the most important things? Thank you.
See people as competent, ask more than you tell, and listen. Listen and follow their agenda.
Seek people with confidence, with competence, ask more than you tell. And what was the third one?
To listen to them and follow their agenda, work on what they think is not working. And I might have misheard you, but I didn't say to seek people with competence. I said look at people like they're competent. So I might have misheard you. I just want to make sure.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is see the competence in someone.
Yes.
View
Yeah.
them from that.
Assume that they're competent.
Okay. So having positive expectations and hopefully they'll live up to that.
Right. You'll treat them like they're smart if you believe they are. Right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I also have a question.
Mhm.
So when you're saying exactly treat people as they're smart, if you're a Scrum Master and you see, okay, my team might be missing some points on like educational wise, so kind of Scrum Master as a teacher, how would you bring that up so that like you still kind of see their wisdom, but you want to also make sure that they have also the same basis of the knowledge so that we can talk about processes and how we can improve them.
Say what you're noticing and ask if some training or a bit of a workshop or whatever about that, even a retrospective about that topic would be helpful. But say what you're noticing, right? I'm noticing that whatever the problem is, because you want to make the problem transparent so that you can find out if it is a problem to them, and so that they can see it. And so the solution to the problem is they need training. The problem's not they need training. That's the solution. And then let them take ownership of, well, how are you going to get that education?
And a follow-up question, then let's say you have 10 people on the team. Would you then use it as a democratic vote? Okay, so if 6 people are saying, yes, we need, then like creating a workshop or like a meeting for everyone or only for those who are interested?
I love this question. So when you're working with a team, you have one client, it's the team. It's not 6 individuals. You don't want to look at them unless you're individually working with them as individuals. You want to see them as the full unit, the team. That's why we give teams team names. You know, it's a unit. And so when I do these things, I kind of talk to the middle. I don't talk to individuals, and I ask the team, how do y'all want to handle this? And then I let them talk to each other and figure it out. If they start talking to me, and they're like, I think this, I think this. I'm like, hey, hold on one second. I need y'all to talk to each other and figure it out. I'm not going to decide for you. And give it back to them. They can handle it. Bernardo.
Thank you. First of all, I'm so glad that I've been learning so much from you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And not only about the topics, but the way you've spoken to us is such a way, it's kind of mesmerizing in a very positive way. And I really like to speak more like you do, but I think I've still got a lot to learn. So it was so good that you're here with us today. And the question is that I sometimes as a Scrum Master, I've been in companies where in a very specific way, they try to sell like these kind of leaders inside of the Scrum teams. To call them a technical leader or something like that, and they empower those leaders with power and decision for the team. So when that happens, is that like everything is lost and that's a lost cause because of the company, or is it worth to keep trying to save agility for that team?
I don't think it's a lost cause, because you can be a leader and have decision-making power and still do that in a way that gives a lot of autonomy. Right? I've run major organizations where I had all the power and I allowed others to make decisions, right? It's the way you interact with people. And so I think it's the matter of taking a step back and looking at what's happening and what looks like it's helpful and not helpful, and having conversations about what you're noticing. Of course, make sure you have permission. Y'all, if you don't have a coaching agreement in place with your team, it's not too late, go do it. That way you get the express permission to give feedback and say, this is what I'm noticing. How do y'all want to handle this? Or maybe it's one-on-one with the leader. I'm noticing that whenever you say something, everybody just says, yep, what he said. We're going to follow him. Is that what you want? And so how do we remove some of that and let them make some of those decisions? Right. And so just remember, is that what you want? Not you need to fix that because this is not agile. It's all about the way you interact. And for those of you who are interested, I'm getting ready to start a CTC mentoring group. So next month we'll meet every other week for a whole year. If you're interested, let me know. Happy to get you included in that. And so Alex Kudnov, who's fantastic, will also be a mentor in that group. And of course, if you need help at your company, please reach out. I am available. People think I'm not available. They think I'm not touchable, but I am. I'd love to work with you. So CTC, yeah, send me an email to that info@tandemcoaching.academy and I can give you more information on the CTC group. Didn't really want to do like a commercial. I just thought of it when Bernardo said what he said. Anybody else?
Yes, hello there, Max from
Hello.
Austin. I've got a bit of halfway observation, half question, but it has to do with, I've been doing agile transformations for quite some time, like 12 years. And I've noticed a trend in the last 4 to 5 years that I did not have to deal with in the past. And it's that trend of, okay, we have a problem maybe of prioritizing our backlog efficiently and let's work with a product folks. And then someone comes in like, oh yes, at my last company, we solved this with a safe implementation. Let's implement safe across everybody. Let's get everybody trained. SPCs are coming in, bum, 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 boom. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait, hold on a second. Maybe we look at the problem, we look at the issue, but it feels as if there's this massive agile industrial complex. And I am very excited that agile is mainstream. Agile can be such a force for good across IT and across all the industries, right? Helping folks and companies to adapt and thrive. But this has just gotten to the point that everybody wants to implement a framework. Everybody wants to bring in who knows who. And I don't know if you work in a company that does a lot of trading. It's not an anti-trading or certification problem, but it's the feeling that where has it gone to? How come we got here? And is there a way to manage this that maybe I've not been successful in communicating sometimes?
Yeah, so remember, whatever makes the most noise gets the most momentum. Dean Leffingwell is brilliant. He's a brilliant marketer and he knows how to run product. Obviously, he's running it. And so there's all this noise. And so people are like, we need that. That's the solution. That's it. Because if you think about Cynefin for just a minute, you've got the simple domain and complex and complicated domains. They're applying simple solutions, packaged solutions to complex problems. And so without realizing that the problems are complex and they have a lot of root causes and a lot of solutions, and you actually need to experiment to find the right answers, they're applying simple solutions. And so that's what happens. That's why they take things out of the box. my method for scaling, Max, I think is like yours. What's the problem you're trying to solve? Let's find out what solves it. You know what? SAFe has a lot of good stuff, and I've pulled a lot from that, and I've recommended people go. Then if you need a website for reference, they've documented everything. Send them there. There's good information, right? And so I pull things out of there and use it. Les has some good stuff. I will not teach scaling frameworks. Let's just say it that way. Because I think it causes too much out of the box thinking. I want people to understand scaling frameworks so they can understand what's available to them. Why would you implement a 4-tier system that's going to cost you $8 million a year when all you need is a scrum of scrums? Like, dude, let's do what makes sense.
Yeah. And for the record, I am by no means a scaling framework hater. I just think it's interesting how, because we have the scaling frameworks, people sometimes get lazy about having to think of how can we decompose and like untangle our app so they don't have to, like 25 different applications don't have to talk to each other. Like, but that takes a lot more work, but it goes down a different direction instead of saying, let's organize how to manage such scaled environments.
Right. Well,
Thank you, Cherie.
You're welcome. At the end of the day, the client doesn't know what they need. That's why they're depending on Agile coaches. And so when you have a hammer, everything's a nail. And so they get someone and they're like, yep, we're gonna give you SAFe because that's what I know. And that's the difference between hiring a highly qualified coach and somebody who isn't, right? I recommend that people look for CECs, CTCs, who have been validated that they understand what they're doing, and they're not going to give you a box solution, and they're not going to lie to you. They're going to tell you the truth about your situation, which might not be the thing you want to hear. All right. Probably time for one more, and that's it, because I know we'll be out of time in about 8 minutes. All right. Well, Jamie, I think we'll try it again. I'm going to hand it back off to you.
All right, Cherie, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a fantastic session and really enjoyed it. I know there was a lot of information here, so we did record this session and it will be available on our YouTube channel later. Since you registered for this event, I'll send that notice out to you via the Scrum Masters of the Universe email when that's ready. It should be ready in the next day or so. So you can watch it again and grab all that info you may have missed. But thanks everyone for coming, for your engagement. And Cherie, again, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for
We enjoyed
inviting
it. Yep.
Wonderful being.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Everybody have an amazing Thursday, or maybe Friday, depending on where your time zone is. I'm not sure.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yep. Thanks everyone. Thanks again, Cherie.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.